Man, God's first creation. Father, son, uncle, brother. On a journey of highs and lows, you were created in the image of God and given dominion in the earth, destined for great things and to fulfill purpose. Join us on Men on Monday as we discuss all issues related to men. We are unifying family, building you, building strong families, building strong futures. Join us on Men on Monday.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Blessings in the name of Jesus. It is wonderful to be here. Men on Monday in the month of July. Yes, so we're heading through this year pretty quickly. And it is great to be here having the men on the rock, not on the block. So here these two powerful men this morning. I'll be hosting with you. So just gonna ask Bishop Mark first, how was your week? And then Pastor Bino, how was your week? So Bishop Mark, are you there? He seems like
Oh,
Bishop
there.
Mark
I
is
think I think
stuck.
Bishop Mark has frozen. I don't know what's happening
Okay.
there.
Yes,
What's
please,
happening
Pastor
with his
Bino.
internet? So until he gets his issues sorted out, it's going to be me and you, Minister Sinclair. But
Yes, please.
good morning, everybody listening to the program. You know, I think I had a phenomenal weekend. Just we honored two ladies that would have served up at Charnot's Pentecostal Church. We would have honored, appreciated. We would have appreciated Minister Pat Small of the People's Cathedral. And we also would have appreciated Disciple Charmaine Roland Boyne. Just thanking them for the time that they were with us and working and so on. So we had a wonderful service as we appreciated these two wonderful women of God. And interestingly, my wife preached, so it really was a woman's affair. And she brought the word and so on. So it was good. And then in the evening, we had an open air just outside of the church. And it was really wonderful. Got to chat with two guys from the community. You know, just connect with them. Not hard presentation, the gospel, but just letting them know that, hey, you guys are special and important and just want to connect with you a little bit. So it was a great Sunday. And then, of course, the wife and I went out on a little date after the
Oh,
open
look at
air.
you.
We just went to Coverly and we hung out a little bit. We had a good time at Coverly and you know it was a great day. I will say no more.
You know, because you know your aliens ain't powerful. Let me leave that there. Bishop Mark, how was your week? How was your week?
Well, weekend was busy. I shared and everything else, so it was hard work, but it went well. And
Why are you sharing those easy work, man? You do that for too
yeah,
many years, man.
you know what? When you finish my take so much out here, sometimes, especially you know,
He's a veteran. He's a veteran, man. A man decorated with many strengths.
I put everything into it. You see, so that's what's
Okay.
happening. Maybe I might
Nice.
even put a little too much into it sometimes. But all right, well, we had a wonderful service. I had some quiet time. We relaxed with my wife and my daughter in the evening. So it went well. Having that little time spending together. So that was good for me.
Okay, wonderful. So to respect the time here, because I know you're a busy man, so we're gonna get straight on it. Last time we spoke about, for the last 2 weeks or so, we were talking about leadership and men. We've delved on into the types of leadership and the personalities when it comes to leadership. So many times I do recognize that, or we all recognize that something because of you being a particular gender, being a man, there obviously is this expectation of you supposed to lead it particularly, even as pastors, actually. You know what I mean? Some people expect that because, especially if you were transitioning as a pastor, and they're going to tie this to family because we're talking about absent fathers or father present, somebody wife wants you to be their dad or think you were their dad, even if it was a bad father. So we talk about this leadership, one in church, home, and in society, and how personalities can be different and how they can be misconstrued and how to improve on those. So we look at those two areas a little bit. So last we looked at the different types of personalities, different types of leadership. So we're bridging that a little bit and made it a little bit more practical. So going to Bishop Mark, his microphone is off. So we talk about personalities and leadership in church. So let me start with you there. Pastor Edson will start to take his notes and get his mind in gear. Bishop Mark, what's to you?
Yeah. Oh, you. I thought I didn't realize I was taking the back first.
Yeah, you were taking it back. Yes.
Right.
Yes,
So
we're
we're basically then talking about what I mean. How the personalities.
I can start in 3 areas: leadership, and how that personality should be understood as a man. Because it isn't because I'm a man, I am a particular way. Yeah.
Right.
The thing of leadership sometimes can be misunderstood, and
Right.
expectations can be misunderstood. And sometimes there need to be improvements because we look at personality, strengths, and weaknesses of all personalities. But we're going to look at the church first. One, as a pastor, so then we ask you personally, and then we go to church leadership for men in their spiritual lives, and we look at in family and society. Those are the 3 areas that we're looking at. So starting from personally, as a leader, as a man, the challenges of leading from man, I hope personalities can be different and misunderstood.
Yeah. Well, I think you've actually summarized everything there, because I will say to you that one, I'll say leadership is very difficult for that same reason that you mentioned there just now in relation to personality. For example, if you're not careful, your personality can be a hindrance to your ability to lead effectively. And why I say that is that I remember from my own experience when I first started as a pastor, because I'd come up with the world, living in sin, playing in bands. Not that there was anything wrong with playing a band, but I was preparing music and doing collective attempts for people to, get down to a lot of stuff. And when I recommitted my life to the Lord, I promised the Lord that the same or more effort I intend to put in than what I would have put in those days in the world. And because of that, and seeing where God has brought me from to where I was, I recognize that my zest for following the Lord and seeking to lead people to do the same thing, I really, in pushing for excellence, push real hard. And what I realized was that my personality, even although it was one which had good intentions, came over sometimes as if I was quote unquote bullying people to serve the Lord or forcing people to, without understanding the whole thing of how personalities, and then people come with different issues and so on. So you're correct that the personality being part of you is something that can be a hindrance. And I would always say it is something you have to look at over time, because in my quest for excellence and to lead and to do what I felt God was calling me to do, it did affect my ability maybe to embrace people, or to keep people, or for people to understand. Maybe afterwards they understood, maybe having some left, having then gotten to know me better, they understood my heart, and that it was more a personality thing than a want to get at you kind of thing. So you're very correct. And that is something that I think as leaders, we have got to continue to remember, that everybody is not the same as us. Everybody will not take things the same way. And a lot of times, if you have a passion for a thing, you have to be still careful how you deliver it, because your passion many times can be misconstrued or misunderstood as you being cruel, or you want to beat somebody into submission, when it's all about passion. If people say to me, well, you're preaching angry. I angry with nobody. I just might be upset. I ain't doing what the Lord tells you to do. And as a leader, I figure that if I'm giving good advice, I expect people to take it and for it to change them. But I remember you said something, Sinclair, in one of the programs we were hearing. You said, you might have the good intentions, paraphrasing here, and you said, what happens, and you were very right, is that sometimes in doing the correcting or trying to encourage, you have to give people the time to digest it and assimilate all the information that you're putting out there. So you're correct. Personalities have a lot to do with how effective or non-effective your leadership can be.
Yeah, I want to jump in there and kind of add a little more to what Bishop Mark is saying. because a lot of times context is an issue as well. Like we all have a default. We typically have a default in our leadership. And so you got four leadership styles. You got the dominant, that's the assertive kind of person, like Bishop Mark said. You come in, you tell people what to do, you command them, you kind of would be a little autocratic. And then you have the influencer, the person that comes and connects with people and comes with a vision and influences and motivates and that sort of thing. And then you have the steady leader, the person that will lead by example, and so on and so on. No, and then you have the conscientious leader, who is more bureaucratic, will establish rules and regulations and that type of thing. So they will establish structure. Now, the thing about it is a couple of things. One, that many times we are dependent on one leader, whereas in the biblical context, you would have had multiple leaders. Yes, you would have had a primary leader, like you would have had Peter, who would have been out front on the day of Pentecost. But then when you look at how Jesus structured the church, he actually structured it with different kinds of leaders, different personalities, and therefore that would have added value to the church. Because where a leader was strong, you would have had, where a leader was weak, you would have had another leader that would have been strong. Yeah, because we all have differences. So even if we look at the makeup of this panel right now, we are different in our orientation, we are different in our personality, but together we provide a comprehensive kind of leadership. And another thing too is that sometimes it depends on the type of church and where the church is at. So there are times like you need a Bishop Mark, you need somebody dominant, you need somebody assertive, because the church was chaotic, the church was without certain direction, that kind of thing. So you need a leader who's going to come in and tell people what to do, because they don't know what to do. So that's where the church is at. That's the state of the church. And even biblically, you could see examples of churches that were off base, and it needed an assertive leader. So there were times that Jesus was assertive because he had to tell his disciples, look, y'all doing foolishness. This is what you need to be doing, etc. Then sometimes the church is in need of a vision. It's been disoriented for years. It has no direction. It doesn't know where it's going. And so you need somebody who's visionary, who can come in at that season of the church and help the church reprogram, focus on the future, that kind of thing. Yeah, no, whether that leader stays in that context is a different matter, because we got to understand the church grows, it evolves. So a leader can come in and they can contribute at a certain time, but it doesn't mean that they can take the church where it needs to go. So they might need to release it, as it were, to somebody else. And then same thing with the conscientious. Yeah, the church needs somebody who's going to come and put certain things in place and help them to deal with certain things. Or sometimes the structure, the church has no order, it has no discipline, everybody doing what they feel like, and so on, no guidelines, no principles to guide the church. And then you need what leader is that? Conscientious. You need a conscientious leader who can have an eye for detail and who's going to work out on these details. So sometimes, depending on where people are at, where the church is at, you need a leader to suit in a given season. But the ideal for me is to have a plurality of leadership. Yeah, you have somebody dominant and out front, but at the same time, there's some other people that will help to balance out the leadership and the different areas. That's where the board now can come play a vital part. But you got to be cognitive of where the church is at, because there is something called situational leadership. It doesn't matter what your personality is. You have to also look at the context, and then you have to adapt your leadership style to facilitate the growth in that context. So, and when the church grows, then you adjust accordingly so that you could continue to facilitate the growth. So we have our default, but we gotta be careful that we are not so rigid in our default that we hinder things from happening.
So that's wonderful, because that's church leadership. Really understanding that there are two things here: one, the leader himself, and the people he's leading. And some things that could go like opposites. That could be like magnets. Some things that could clash, because what is needed at the time and the person at the time may not be. And so we gotta be able, hopefully the program share this with other men and women to understand this, that while a leader may be not your cup of tea, it may be the cup of tea that is needed for the holistic church. right? So you might not be individually getting your thing, but what is happening is that the season the church is in, Bishop Bino said it quite interestingly. Because one of the things I've done is test church health. We invited into churches to test the church health, and where there were churches that were, let me see, company where they were steady, they were in that steadiness position. So you find that the people were loyal, but they were not necessarily progressive. So people very loyal. People are going over there, they're here, committed, but there's no progression in the church. There's no things moving forward. People don't want to take risks. They don't want to change. So sometimes you have to look at the health of the church. And what can happen is if you have a church that's progressively stagnant, but then a person who comes to be progressive, it is going to make the church uncomfortable. Right? Oh, how we come and change things, and things were accustomed being this way. So understand that church leadership also needs sometimes that pastor or leader has to understand sometimes it is a time to change and understanding the dynamics. So I think that was very wonderful both parts. And also Bishop Mark said something that I really want to say, that he came from an industry of music. And if you know anything about music leaders, most music leaders are very, very strong. If you look at if you know about that culture of musicians, the persons in charge, majority of them, they're very, very, very detailed. They don't play, right? So you say coming from an environment where in music you can kind of sort of hit a note. You know what I mean? You look at Prince, you look at Michael Jackson, those you can't be off of that note by a millisecond. You understand? So they were very detailed on what they're doing. As he said, coming from that environment, coming to that leadership where no excellence is it. We don't have, kind of sort of. So understand the season you're in, I think is quite interesting. So I want to say good morning to Ms. Small. Thank you for being here, Ms. Holder. Sergeant. Thank you this morning. Blessings to be there. Continue to share the program. And we're going to go into the next type of leadership. We talk church leadership now. So let me talk about men and being spiritual leaderships. Quite interesting. So we just want to look at that men, spiritual leaders, because next we're going to look at leading the home and then and a society, the idea of what men look like as leaders. Because we find a lot of men are finding problems where society and not fitting into society's ideology of being a leader. So the second one we're looking at is men in church. So we have the pastors, we have the congregation. So men as spiritual leaders. So what is your opinion? Let me first go to Pastor Edson and then Bishop Mark.
I going to relate it to myself personally, yeah, as a spiritual leader, because I know that sometimes people want you to be the leader in family devotions and that kind of thing, and some men really are, but it's also an area that I think a lot of us fall down on when it comes to consistent leading of family devotions and that kind of thing. But one of the things, though, I believe that spiritual leadership, however, starts with you, in the sense of you have to invest in your personal relationship with the Lord. And you have to make sure that you are growing spiritually, because you have to have something to offer. Yeah. So yes, you need to have the family devotions. You need to spend time praying with each other and that kind of thing. But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you bring something to the table and that you are growing spiritually. Because if you're not growing spiritually, you can't offer anything. And I think it's important to be an example, both at home and also at church, because sometimes you might have a case where the person going to church, but it's not really shaping and influencing their behavior and that kind of thing. So you have to set an example, a godly example, and many times that is important for your children, because they need to see that you're living as a godly individual, that you're applying the truth of scripture, that you're living the way that God will have you to live. So I think setting that example is important, and that for me is where it starts. But I know, for example, there's some women that they're looking for the man to be the upfront one, the man to always initiate devotions and that kind of thing. And whether that is right or wrong, or whether that's merely an expectation, that's something that has to be discussed. Because you have some women that are more spiritually mature than their husbands, for whatever reason. Sometimes they've been in the church longer, they've been serving the Lord longer, they've been more active and so on. And then they marry a man who might be a little younger in the faith, and he knows how to develop, knows how to grow, but they expect him, in a sense, to be the spiritual giant. But the reality is that he's not there yet, and so he's still growing. So sometimes in the context of marriage, there's certain things that you have to discuss rather than originally saying it must be this way. The husband always got to be the one to call me for us to have devotion. If he don't call me, I ain't doing nothing because he ain't fulfilling his responsibility and that sort of thing. Yeah, so some women might be more passionate and dominant in that area, and so they can initiate at times once the husband doesn't have a problem joining the wife and praying and stuff like that. So in my marriage, it has been both ways. Sometimes it was me calling for the family devotion. Sometimes it was my wife calling for the family devotions. And so that's how it worked in my household. It wasn't, well, you have to do this because you're the spiritual man, the spiritual lead head, and so on. It wasn't like that. So that's just my take on it for now.
Yeah, I think what you've said some positive things there because you know, I always say leadership is a funny thing, but leadership is a key word. See, you said some true things there because a lot of times you find that the women are more spiritually strong than the men. For obvious reasons, we look in our churches and we see percentage-wise there are more women there than men. But the key part to it is that you see, let us start with the person who's supposed to be the Christian. I think that should take the lead, but the lead in leadership. And I always say, if a particular, for example, if my wife has a greater understanding of the word than myself, the key thing as a leader to do, as a spiritual leader, spiritual, is to learn from her, to be able to give her that ability to share. I found a lot of times because men have taken up the mantle of saying, well, look, I'm the spiritual leader, I'm the priest of the house, and they talk it, then they want to manipulate or control or make their wives feel like fools. I've had situations where they say, they sit down, just listen, because if they have a thought, the husband want to turn it back, excuse me, to turn it back, like to make the person feel that they don't have any sense or that's not what it's saying. The Bible, you know, you got it. And so they want to come over so much as preachers and teachers that the whole thing is detrimental to the development of the family spiritually. So it's important to balance it. And as you were saying there, Pastor Edison, if you have, for example, over the years, I married to a lady who was in the church from the time she did a baby. My wife has never been out of church, never. And we've been married 29 years. So where we operate is that we have prayer times together. We use our breakfast time to share, to whatever. And these things are not big, exhaustive things. But a lot of times my wife and myself, we do a lot of our spiritual development on our own, right? We come together as a family because of our daughter, but we do a lot of that thing because we do have to meet as leaders and so on. We get an opportunity to pray together. But in how we are set up, because we are both very strong in the word, so we share, we lay in bed, and that become our devotional time. We talk about various issues before we go to sleep, and we do that. Get up on mornings and the hustle and bustle of everything else. We put certain things in place to get some time to touch God on our behalf and so on. But a lot of the time we do our spiritual development individually, you know, because I know that she will break the word well and so on. But it is important that the man does still be there. You know, I think that he has to be. And part of leadership is not boss. You don't got to take full control. What should happen as the spiritual head is that you provide avenues for your wife and for your children to develop. So sometimes you sit back and they might not be 100% on, but you say to them, look, you know, let us clarify this a little bit in a tone more than coming over like, listen, let me tell you, you're the spiritual man here. That's very against you talking, right? So it's important that we understand leadership, and being the priestly one doesn't mean you got to be in charge of everything. What you do, you learn how to develop yourself. And it even happens in leadership as a leader in church, because over the years, what I've done, I had to be assertive in the beginning because it was a new church. We didn't come in out of no particular church to give us so I had to be very assertive. But one of the things that happened over the years, a lot of people didn't realize what was happening, but I was looking all the time to develop leaders. And now we have a leadership structure where there are very few things that I have any control over. Yes, I'm the overseer, but I don't walk around asking the hospital. If I see a problem, I deal with the leader. I don't deal with the other people because I take myself out of that. So I have leaders in all areas. I got a men's leader, I got this. Why? Because now is a different thing. People now have to see their particular ministries now as their little church. They're the pastors of their thing. So I meet at a higher level. You know, I've passed the stage where I go into meetings now and I got to be in everything. And why this? No, I deal with the leaders at the higher level. Why? Because now as a visionaire, I don't do I mean, still find myself doing some donkey work because we don't have our own church, right? We still got to go and set up and so on. But that was saying that thing should also flow over into the family, and therefore make sure that you are leading, but you don't go to be at the front all the time. And you're right, Pastor Edison. Sometimes the women come with the understanding, or you're the priest, so you take it over. No, but you as the leader got to develop that by opening up the spaces for your wife and your children to develop spiritually, as you also do.
So one of the things that what I'm hearing from both Bishop Mark and Pastor Bino is that yes, there is different styles, there's different influence, especially when it comes to spiritual leadership. My biggest challenge I find is that when it comes to spiritual leadership, I really want to give the women a little knock. The first thing here is, oh, you're supposed to do devotions. And like that is the only area it seems like he's the leader in. Like it's also the devotions. That is it. Other areas, is devotions, full stop. And I said, no, it goes beyond that. Because you can get a person that's so religious. So yeah, 5 o'clock, be up, let me go. I treat you like hell the rest of the day. So, this thing of devotions, and I tell him, honest to God, I say, show me the Bible where the man's supposed to do devotions. I'm not saying he shouldn't. But somehow there's the idea as a spiritual head that devotions is what that means. And it's actually a little bit more deeper than that. Maybe you should do a program on what this headship spiritually looks like. And we did do a little bit on it, but I think that it takes a little bit more for women to understand that. Ms. Holder asks, can one's leadership style change? Yes, 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 you can change, and I think Pastor Bino mentioned that earlier. And that is learning something called emotional intelligence. So we do it organically. But my thing is actually, I think that we need to be empowered as individuals. It's just we have new technology saying that we don't drive donkeys anymore, we have cars. And yes, one thing we didn't understand personalities and all these different things. And yes, we got them done back then. But now we are here. We have more information, more understanding of the human mind, personalities, and all those things. And I think it's very important that we need to understand leadership styles and that they should change. And the next thing she asked, does one personality influence your leadership style? And we touched on last week. So yes, definitely. As you look here on our panel, if we were using the same DISC model, Pastor Bino, he put up the other areas. Like I'm very much in that dominant influence space. Bishop Mark would be definitely in the dominant conscientious space, and Pastor Bino would definitely be in the steadiness conscientious space. Right? So we have a nice dynamic here. So you get the Golden Girls type of thing. Some of us would like a personality and someone would like a personality here. So it's not be identified with certain personalities. And let's say let's just using this as a model from what Bishop Bino said, where we were leaders. Let me say all three of us were the leader of a church. If we sat and understood emotional intelligence, the church would be edified well. Yeah? Because we'd be able to know where we need Bishop Mark to put things in place, where you need Minister Brown to be able to pull the people to influence them, where you need precept upon precept, Bishop Edson who can take the notes and especially put things in place and keep things in mainstream. So the dynamic there will be so interesting because then it would keep the boat steady. And you will see that God did that. Moses was a different type of leader to Joshua. Yeah, so the baton was passed, but it wasn't like Moses. God chose another Moses. And so we could do that in church where we are looking for a person that like another person to pass the baton. But as I mentioned, persons like a 4x1 relay, although each person is supposedly running a 100, they're actually supposed to have different running skills. Because the starter has to have a different skill set to hear that gun, running the curve, come into the straight. The second leg run the longest leg. They run like 110 meters. Yeah, on the back stretch. The third leg, all he runs is corner. And then that person that has the ability to drive home despite everything last place, like a place to stay for. And I think in church, they should need to understand that. And I think it's quite pivotal.
This is clear just before you move on. One of the things too is that in leadership, right, you got to be flexible. You got to be prepared to learn, and you must be humble. Because if I'm going to work with Minister Sinclair and Bishop Mark, at the end of the day, we have distinctive styles, and that is good. That is healthy for the church. But we have to give way to each other. If now I say my love, there's my default, there's how it should be. Therefore, I'm not interested in how Minister Sinclair can do it, and how Bishop Mark can do it, it can create confusion. Yeah, it can create chaos. It can create competition. If we understand that when we blend and we adapt to each other and submit to each other and humble ourselves with each other, you're going to find that there's going to be this flow that is going to result in the health of the church. Now, has been a problem in a number of churches. If you look at some of the large churches, what you find many times is a breakdown in leadership, because for whatever reason, the guys couldn't understand how to complement their personalities, how to complement their leadership styles, how to integrate them. And so you have a person that kind of said, man, I want to be in charge, or a person undermining, they're waiting for the opportunity now that they could take over the lead and that sort of thing. And that was the very spirit that the disciples had. And Jesus had to say, no, that's not how you operate. That's how the Gentiles operate. They want control. They want to manipulate. They want to lord it over people. But you guys, I need you to work together so that then you can build a healthy church. You are all going to be, and I paraphrase it, you're going to be different. You're going to be different. But in leadership, I want you to be able to see eye to eye on the things that matter so that you can develop the people. So when you have that humility and that openness and that flexibility, you will find that the church is going to become stronger, because you're going to have the strengths. You're going to have the strengths of Minister Brown. You're going to have the strengths of Bishop Haywood. You're going to have the strengths that I would bring. And then we can grow together, and people then get to see how the Trinity, in a sense, works together to advance God's purpose in the earth. So I think that's important for us to be open and humble.
And also going into that also is Jason, as he said, all those leaders also had a hand in shaping into great leaders. They didn't start great. And that is one of the things, honestly, I think that's a very powerful point, Jason, I want to say. And it's for both church and home, family, is giving a person opportunity to fail. Sometimes we almost identify a person by their failures or their mistakes. You know what I mean? And it'd be like, oh, remember when Brown do this? I remember Bishop Martin was, you know, that's 20 years ago, right? Since then, the person they do it since, but we hold on because there's the fear of men. And I honestly, as a man, as a black man, I'm telling you, we're held into a space of, oh, we expect you to fail. And when you do fail, we climatize that and identify that person by the failure. Yes, and a lot of men actually, that's one of the things when I looked at the challenge of men in leadership is that they fear failing. And in therapies, that's one of the things I have to get guys to understand, that because you fail, you're not a failure.
And Minister Sinclair, one of the issues in church is that sometimes we're too judgmental and we're too condemning. One of the things that I'm trying to do at Charnots, one of the things that we're getting into, we want to create a culture of honoring. We want to create a culture that says thank you for the work that you have done. And I find sometimes in church, we become so judgmental in terms of the leader didn't do this and the person didn't do that, rather than appreciate what they are doing right. And many times, as Bishop Mark has said on the program, many times people are looking for the 100%, but you're getting 90%. But you're looking at that. You're looking at the 10% that you're not getting. And that's the way how many leaders feel. Like, hey, I'm serving, but you're measuring me on the 10%, but you're not measuring me on the 90%. So I think, yeah, giving people room to feel. I understand that you develop in leadership. The leader that you will be tomorrow is not the leader that you were yesterday. And if you're open, you continue to evolve. You continue to grow in understanding of the things of God, understanding the nature of people, understanding tasks. So the idea is that we grow, and that's how it should be. The disciples had to grow. Those men were all over the place. When you look at these men just did not have it together. But Jesus worked with them and developed them to be powerhouses. And even Peter, after the day of Pentecost, this man was still, you know, when Paul had to pull him up. Paul had to pull him up because he was out of order. And so it shows you that even though you're a great man of God, there are still areas that you need to work on. And you continue to work on them, and you continue to develop and become a better leader.
Okay, what asked Bishop Mark this here, know that we've come to this part of society, so bridging the same thing we're on, failure. So we talk about your personal journey as a leader. So we talk about church leader, husband leader, society leader, failure, and the ability to also lead men and to build men. So it's almost like four, but still one. But where failure, are we not reducing an individual? So you have failed. How did you get past that? Not to make yourself identify with failure, and also at home as a pastor, as a man, as a husband, father, and also leading men, so that they don't feel that their failure is their identity.
Well, let me start first with the one part. I think that what I got that saying from in terms of the the 10% and the thing was a revelation that my wife kind of gave me when she said to at a meeting at night that I am a kind of a perfectionist and therefore I might be looking for 100% where she may only be able to provide 85, and that stuck in my head because that helped me with my leadership 100% from the standpoint that recognizing that people will take time. There are people that will only be able to give 90%, but why should we be, as you said, Pastor, be seeking to run behind the 10? You always want people to improve and then drop out and then lose out on 90%. However, I want to say here, though, that it is important that we do not encourage failure. No, people will fail, people will make mistakes, but as a leader, you have to be strong enough to tell people when they are failing and when they can do better. You see, it's all I'm going to say, you knock a person for failing. But what has to happen is that you have to be in a position to be strong enough to correct persons when they are going in the wrong direction. Because not, you will develop a space where people think, well, I've heard it in churches, well, don't worry about how the song go and whether you're in key. When it get to the Lord, it will be in key. So, let me depend on the Spirit. Everything got to be so much rules. Everything got to be so planned. So let me just come church and do the dog. However the Spirit move. Say, okay, want to jump on the roof and somebody want to prophesy. Let God rule. Doesn't work so. So it's important too that you let your people understand, as a strong leader, leadership says you got to be correcting, right? Yes, you don't look back at a man that a man was a gangster or they failed 10 years ago, but you would want to still put things in place that would assess a person's progress. And so from that standpoint, no taking it like from my marriage. And so I've been fortunate because I have a wife who's very much into the Lord. And I tell her, hey, I know a lot of men don't have it as easy as I do. So I thank God for her. I waited a long time for her. I got married 33. So I am blessed because of my waiting. But a lot of fellas rush after the talk and the looks and thing and then in bear trouble. So the leadership part of my home, my wife respects me. She still has a say. As a matter of fact, she runs most of what happens in my home in terms of, especially since I started pastoring, in terms of taking care of the home, paying the bills. That she looks after everything. She tells me what is there, what is not there, we can do this, mom, because I realize she has that stuff, and I can trust her to take care of that. Church-wise, now, what you have to recognize is that there must be a element of empowering people and so on. But here's my concern with it. More often than not, when you are seeking to build people up and you God has told you already, look, this person ain't got everything together, but there's something in the midst of that, or it's just shell, there's a gem. But what you have now, the problem you have as a leader is that you're seeking to lead that person now and pull them, tug them, do what you got to do, be tough on them sometimes to bring out that goal, that talent. And a lot of times people rebel against it because they think that you're trying to pull me. He don't want a part of me. Then the opposite is really true. So it is difficult to find that balance, I would say, especially within the church, because a lot of times people come into the church to be affirmed. They come into church to be seen. So you see people sitting down and might see Minister Sinclair doing drama. I say I could do that. Pastor using he tell you we could do better than that. You get them a chance, they don't even turn up for rehearsal, So you have these kind of dynamics happening all the time, which makes your leader. So you can tell that for example, let me deal with it directly, right? There's this young man here who's moderating this morning. One of the most talented men that I know. I asking you, nobody don't have to come and tell me. I lived it. But one of the challenges is when you are talented and you have a lot of giftings and so on. What I've learned, because I'm a musician, all that, is that you have to give yourself time to develop and time to deal with it. Because what happens a lot of time, because you want to do, I know I was in a big church at a Bond Life Assembly, and they tell you want to be in everything. I want to be. And a man would say, but he no come, don't put he in everything because he might not last. You understand? And these Christians, right? So as a leader now, I got to say, well, look, you deal with this. Let me show you work. Deal with that. Now I don't know that 2, 5 years, 6 years from now, whatever, you're going to be my man. You're going to be in charge of it. You're going to be one of my elders. You're going to be one of my co-pastors. I see that. But I can't come and tell you so. Well, I come and tell you, sir, Pastor Bino, or you might be Bino at the time, not pastor yet. I believe that you have the potential to be a pastor in the next 5 years. Man, listen, you're going to start walking as a pastor already. You know what's that? Pastor Mark tell me, so you don't do it so. What you do, you pull plugs, you put pressure. But a lot of people don't understand that. And that is why, over the years, pastors, not only myself, have been misunderstood. And that's where the leadership is difficult. Because you know that if you push a person too fast, if you give a person too much responsibility, boy, you can get in the head. It's a human thing to do, right? And then now they're going to start thinking, well, if I at this stage now, it is time now for me to go and start my own church. And a lot of times that is wrong, right? I stood with pastors for a number of years before I even ventured. I thought I would have been the pastors in these pastors' church. And God, through Miles Monroe, shut me down there and tell me you're going to maximize your potential. You don't wait for nobody to tap you on your back. So the leadership now within, as a leader in the church, becomes increasingly difficult because, yes, you see the potential, but you're going to learn how to harness it. You're going to learn how to give a fellow little responsibility. I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman who came to our church years ago, and he said to me, oh, you know, at my church, I go around and I preach and all of that. And I watched him a little bit, and I said, well, I'll give him a chance. And I waited, and he was a little impatient. And I then give him a chance to do a Wednesday night prayer meeting and to share. That man stumbled, mumbled, get nervous, stutter for half an hour through something. And yet he was thinking I hold him back. But when I did put him now in the fray, he was frayed out, right? So these are the things that make the leadership structure, because a lot of times people feel they know better than the leader. And that is also another challenge, right? So it is, oh Lord, it's a big thing. And you know, some of us, some leaders are blessed with people who understands that and who are prepared. And then there are others who maybe understand it later down the road. I'm still waiting for a book on drama or something from Minister Sinclair, and I am really, really tempted. I know he's busy to try and get him to come and put some of his dramatical, his drama skills back in our church, and at least give him a production for one of these Christmases. But we'll talk about that off camera.
Blessings. And I think this is coming closely. We're coming to the end, really. So I want us to be able to take away this information. And I think, if possible, what we can look at is developing men and the different styles of developing. We talk about leadership. Yeah. But I think the number one thing I think most churches across the world, not just Barbados, and I look and I look at the information, is that there is a challenge in understanding how to develop men. And I want to give the panelists an opportunity to go and do some research. That the fatherlessness is a big component of that. Yeah, or not having fathers, because we don't have we can talk about our Heavenly Father, but the earthly father is the bridge between him and you know, so when you don't have that, and you then have even a spiritual leader coming and doing fathering, yeah, if I've not been raised, be it good or bad, it is a challenge. So you know, you're kind of trying to fill a gap that is so wide. Yes, it could be misunderstood, like be misconstrued, because, and there are different modalities, and I can see that because the work I'm doing. So I want to give you an opportunity to have to look at that there are different styles, and so we're going to take in Bishop Mark's style, we're going to take a little bit of Bishop Ezra's style, but I want us to at least bring at least 4 understandings or styles, because they're of, and we talk specifically men here, because women have a similar thing, but we're going to talk about men because an absent father equals an absent man.
Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head there 100%. That is one of the main challenges, because a lot of times when you, as you said, dealing with the father, where the fathering is missing. So you know, you playing daddy, and the body can't receive you because they don't understand it. You know, you hurting them, you pulling them down. Then in actual fact, you're building them. So that's a very key point they've mentioned.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you, everyone. We're out of time, so I'm excited program. Share this one, spread it across the world. We look forward to next week developing men and the different strategies of that. So blessing. This was Men on Monday on July the 11th, 2022. God bless you. Lots of love. I look forward to seeing you next week.